go ahead and call this January 15th meeting to order for the OMP committee for OJRSA. First on the agenda, any public comments? Kyle, you got anything for us?
I'm good.
You know, if you speak as the public, you have to stop your clock.
Oh,
You can't get paid for it.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, you good? You gonna stay business-like? Okay, all right. Want to make sure we keep paying you, right? Next item up, presentation discussion items, update on current projects. Chris, anything particular you want to address?
Well, we finally have gotten underway with the work order system, the CMMS system. That we had the discovery meeting on that last Friday, where they met with all of the different departments that we have here to get input as far as what they were looking to build and put together for us. Because the depth of this thing can be minimal, or it can be very, very detailed. So we had that, and then we're gonna have, I guess it's a 2-week, bi-weekly meeting on that to get updates as to where they are. The goal with the whole thing still is to have it actually live, absolutely live by July 1st, but it's possible that it may be active even before July 1. That's correct. So the next thing we're gonna do, and we're getting them to help us put this together, is we're gonna look for and seek a financial system that'll integrate with this fairly seamlessly, so that when we put in work orders, or we do a work order and need to purchase an item, is working directly with the financial system. We're able to put costs associated with all work, track staff, labor, equipment, materials. So there'll be a cost for everything that we do, so that we can make decisions in the future regarding repair, replacement, or run to failure with.
It'll help your budgeting too. I mean, you'll be able to track it.
Will that replace bookkeeping and accounting software, this new one you're talking about?
Lynn's hoping so. Yeah, we have what is it? Public. The old QS1 system is what we're using. And QS1 Public, they were purchased, and it's not even supported by the company that bought them any longer, which is Springbrook.
That's what we got. Springbrook.
So
yeah, they were really strong back in the 70s. And
They're
it was
still
so strong,
in the 70s.
and they were so strong then, but they didn't even
Still.
change it. It's been the same as it was back in the 70s.
Well, just to show you how far I guess we've come, when I started work here, it was still a DOS base.
It is now.
It still is.
Well,
still is.
I guess that one, but you had
It's
like the
still
work
DOS,
order
right?
system was still that way.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was all paper, right, where you had to print them
Yeah.
and file them from paper. So this will move, we're tracking complaints this way. We'll eventually move our permitting system to this, and it's all built around the maps. So it's all based on geography. And so it'll attach these directly to, the assets that service the locations. And it's vertical and horizontal, so this will work here at the treatment plant as well. So back when we used the system at REWA, it wasn't near what it is now. And the cost of these things has come down so much, it's unbelievable. Now it's all cloud-based as opposed to having to have dedicated servers for that. So we're looking forward to that. I know, and I think staff, Kyle mentioned that staff are even looking forward to it as well. Especially when, they're having input into the system. The only other one I'll mention is that now that we have the indefinite delivery contract with the engineer, so we don't have to go out there and procure engineering services for each of these, larger scale projects that we're looking to do. We can, provide those to the consultants to handle for us directly. It will still require each project that we advance individually to go before the board to execute the contracts, but it's cut out the requirement for the solicitation services, the design portion of the design bid build, or whatever we're gonna use them for. So Speeds Creek was the first item that we were planning on doing this with. And I got an update on where we are with that now that, this hasn't begun officially, but I just asked the Weston Sampson, who'll be the one that's gonna work on this with us, initially is going to be, the first phase of that's gonna be identifying the preferred route, because they're gonna have to go out there and do a general site survey to look at existing utilities in the road where we may be able to run this, and it's possible out there. I mean, I think there's a gas transmission main out there somewhere, which may make it a little more difficult to do, but they'll be looking at some of the various options that we can do, and including the leaving it partially in service and having to pump around while we're doing replacement of that too. So that, and then relooking or reevaluating the master plan to ultimately see, because the master plan had in the 10 to 15 year range, if I remember right. A lot of that just depends too on what happens in that Newry, Old Clemson Road area where the flow would be going around, projected eventually to go around the city through the Martin Street pump station, which would then go to Speeds, Perkins, here. The plan looked at, and this goes back a number of years prior to my time even here, where there was consideration of replacing and rerouting the Martin Creek force main that would bypass the Speeds, which means Speeds would considerably downsize. And that station, it needs replacing already. We're, just like this force main here, we're just kind of buying time with this, but we're going to find out what is going to be the best decision, the best financial decision to make. Whether it's revisiting and maybe we don't change the way the flow goes, maybe we continue to go through Speeds instead of rerouting Martin Creek. So we're going to look at that as part of this initial phase as well. Those are the only two I'll mention. Do you have any that you want to touch on, Kyle?
No. I mean, we don't have any updates on when they go get started on the dewatering. They did contact me this week and said the first thing they will be doing is, it sounds like taking down the blue tank down there. So, but I don't have a date or anything yet.
I'll mention this. So this is just kind of coincidental. We got that rebuild of that clarifier, final clarifier number 3, that we had to have done as an emergency. We advanced it up because the drive components are gone. So it's not in use. So that's, they're planning to have that completed. Is it May or June, hopefully?
It's a 24-week lead time just to get the equipment on site.
So and that was, we put in that purchase order. That was back in when, November, December timeframe?
Yeah.
So we're hoping the first, the middle part of the year. I just happened to come across a purchase order for when we rebuilt. So that one is original, but these, it was put in as part of the upgrade back in the mid-90s. But these others, the original train here that consisted of 2 primary clarifiers and 2 secondary clarifiers, we had one of each of those rebuilt when I first started here back in 2017. It is now more expensive to rebuild one of these than it was to rebuild 2 of them in 2017.
Wow.
Just the material cost.
Yeah.
The initial cost included the labor. We don't even know what the labor cost will be, $100,000 range. So
that will be added to that cost then?
Yeah, Kyle's put together a bid package because we're gonna have to advertise for that because it's gonna exceed the threshold in the procurement code. So
Are there specialized firms that do that kind of work?
They are.
You'll have to reach out to.
But it's firms that would typically do work on the
Or
treatment
city,
plant anyway. It's like the ones that are doing the dewatering building, which is Harper. They're capable of doing it. I think the vendor itself has they've got they may be able to do it. So we're gonna be still looking at installation costs.
But it's not a general bid. It goes out to specialized companies.
Yeah, it'll go to the main contractor that are in the area. Yeah, a little contractor couldn't do it if they never install a clarifier, then they can't do it.
and we'll advertise it like, you know, what's required in the procurement code. We'll put it on the state business opportunities website. It'll go through the whole public.
Oh, okay.
So we have to make sure that when we write the request for bids, that we, you know, that we spec it to where, you know, only the qualified firms are gonna be eligible to apply.
If you put something like this on a state website, I know it probably wouldn't be financially advantageous, but could a company in Columbia that does this kind of work bid on that job?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's typical that you'll have, you know, they'll come and they'll just set up, they'll just stay in a hotel here for however long it takes to do it. Yes, like the company that we have redoing the rehabilitating those lines, they're where out of Charlotte.
Yeah.
They're from all over. They brought in a crew from the Northeast.
Northeast.
They're just staying up here in a hotel during the week and maybe going home for the weekend. So, and I know y'all have had the same thing. They'll stay at that Hampton Inn in Seneca. You probably see their trucks there regularly. So yeah, it'll be open to anybody. They just have to have the proper license in the state, contractor license to do the work.
Okay.
But I don't have anything else. If you don't have anything else.
All right, board and commissioner goals for 2026. We've been provided with a list of 4 goals that I think were previously discussed. Are you looking to just finalize those as a final recommendation to the board?
Not really. Well, no, what we did in the past, you know, in past years is we had the general ones that the board considered, then we had some committee specific ones that the committee wanted to add to it. And I think that last year we built on to the general ones within the committee, so it'll be also provided to the F&A committee to see if they have any goals and objectives that the commissioners and committee members would like to work toward as well for the overall well-being of the organization.
The Speech Creek was the one I was thinking about, so you already
Yeah,
got it
that's number
on
4,
there.
okay.
Mhm.
That can continue.
So the finance committee will work on number 3. I mean, you guys got using your project list and the amount of money that you think you're gonna have to allocate to those projects.
Well, I really think that number 3, and I went back after the last meeting when I was reading over the minutes to try to make sure that I captured in here, because this basically is the same as the goals we had last year. But some of them may have been completed, and some of them I think that the board determined would really roll up as part of that reconstitution project that we did. And number 3 is one of those that is kind of a, you know, is part of the reconstitution, but part of a standalone one as well, because, you know, it's difficult for us to go currently and borrow money. We currently have to go through and have approval from each of the city councils to be able to issue debt. So that's where, you know, right now we're having to and have for years. I think the last borrowing we may have done was an SRF loan. I may be wrong about this, but it may have been an SRF loan associated with the treatment plant expansion back in the 90s. And that was, you know, again, back when we were the Oconee County Sewer Commission too. And I think we may have had some debt forgiveness loans that over the years. I think that the septic receiving station may have been something like that, but I don't even know that for certain. But, you know, right now we're budgeting using just cash, you know, whatever we bring in fees. We are able to use impact fees, but it can only go for expansion or growth related projects. So say we replace a pump station, you know, to be able to use impact fees to pay for any part of that pump station, there has to be an expansion or a growth component to it. So upsizing it from, you know, say a 500 gallon a minute station to a 1,000 gallon a minute station, but the fees can only pay for the cost as that are associated with the growth. So the O&M regular budget would be able to pay for the, what the cost would be for an in-kind replacement. And then impact fees would be above that. That's what we did with the Davis Creek Road pump stations back in 2018, is supplement the cost of replacing those with impact fees. But the base funding of that came from what we used to fund depreciation. So it came from that amount.
Okay.
Remind me where we are with Seneca Creek Pump Station. I know at one time that was a significant issue that needed to be replaced. And I know we've got the force main upgrade through that development, but wasn't the pump station itself a priority at one time?
It still is. We've got several pump stations, and that's one that it's needed for, growth. We're able to buy a little bit of growth with the replacement of that force main. I think that we have around this 100,000 extra gallons or so. Does that sound about right? After Mr. Little's project is put in. But the station itself is beyond its useful life. We've done a fair amount of work on it over the years, and it's just one of several that are in that same position. We've got the Speeds Creek would be in that same position. We've got, I think, Chostow is one I've heard that is in need of replacement.
You've been speaking about Speed Creek a lot lately, but I hadn't heard you mention Seneca Creek in quite some time. So did we do some work out there to buy us some time, or do we still need to focus on its replacement as well?
I think we've done a good bit of work not long ago with pumps out there, did we not, Kyle, or with motors or something over the last couple of years?
We've been replacing some motors out there.
Electrical
Not
work.
pumps. I mean, not the pump side.
So we're
Well,
able.
we have a design, don't we, already?
No, well, we don't have a design for it. We had a plan that was put in place with the design of the force main, Goodall Mills Kaywood. Goodall Mills Kaywood, I think they did a study to determine what size it may need to be and put together a preliminary cost of what that would be. But that was as far as it went. It did never go so far as the design. Typically a pump station, though, the design of that is a little bit, I don't want to say it's easier, but you're working within a confined space. And they're, you generally know the field conditions. The replacement that we did of the Flat Rock pump station back a number of years ago, they can get creative with repurposing or reusing the structure, which may be an option for us out at Speeds Creek to be able to use the dry well as a new wet well for because I think that station was projected to be a submersible station because it's in a floodplain, isn't it, Kyle? So,
In the head, for sure.
but it's not where I would say it has to be replaced immediately, other than to be able to get additional flow through it. We're able to keep it up and going. Would it be?
We lined that
The gravity line.
we relined the gravity line that fed that, right? Did that help free up any?
Down to the zone building. Or, yeah, I guess to the zone building.
Yeah, I think that because it was going through a swampy area or something like that. Is
Yeah,
that
it was a
right?
clay line, 18 inch. We relined that all the way from, it used to be the South State Bank, I don't know the name of the bank now, all the way down to where it ties in you guys at the zone building.
Would you would be more familiar with this than me, but with the stations that we have out there, where would you rank it as far as need for what I would say extensive rehab to the point of considered replacement?
I don't know, because it's funny, we hadn't had any issues with that. With Seneca Creek.
You didn't have to say it that way.
I mean, I'm saying, we were having it, they would have to go out there frequently, but the past 6-8 months, they haven't had to work on any pumps. So, again, it kind of comes in stages. I say that today, and then they'll have to be out there 2 days every week
Yeah.
for the next 4 weeks. You know, it's,
I asked only because I know that was a topic of discussion
Yeah.
for quite some time, and wanted to make sure we didn't, bypass another need for Speeds Creek if that one still needed to be discussed.
Well, that's the one, if I go back and remember correctly, that was one that was considered when DES or DHEC back in the day did our collection system inspection. I remember they visited that one. I know they visited Flat Rock. You weren't here back then, were you, Kyle? I think that was done in, was it 2019, 2020 timeframe when they did our inspection, when we had, that ultimately led to the consent order. But that was one that was, that they took a look at. But I don't know, because I haven't heard as much about it since we've done that work out there. The one I know that we do need to do some stuff with, no matter what we ultimately do with the pump station, is gonna be over at Speeds, because the generator, it's inoperable. So we do know we need to do something with that, even if it's something as little as having it where we can bring in a portable generator as necessary. Is the generator inside that building or
it's
out?
still work. Yeah, that one.
So,
We got multiple generators we gotta have put in a plan for the next few years at different stations.
So if we were to bypass Speeds Creek with the Marks Creek line replacement, and it allows you to downsize, downgrade Speeds Creek, does that negate the replacement, or regardless if it's downsized from a daily flow, does it still need to be replaced?
it'll have to be replaced either way.
Either way.
Either way, it'll have to be replaced. The thing that, the dilemma that I'm facing now, that I've challenged the engineers to work through, is, if you look at the master plan currently, they have that force main bypass in it, which means we downsize speeds. Well, that means we downsize the pump station, but we're also gonna have to reduce that force main. So what we're considering doing now, in a way, has to be considered as a temporary, a 10-year project that's gonna be possibly thrown out, because we're gonna put in a smaller diameter line. We have issues currently there already at the discharge with hydrogen sulfide. So having this is a 14-inch line out there now, putting in a 15-inch, which is what we're looking at doing, likely be doing with the replacement. And then just the storage that you're gonna have of low flow in that line over time is just gonna be nothing but problematic. We shouldn't have problems with the pipe, but we're gonna have the issues with the hydrogen sulfide. So that's kind of where, in my mind, I'm trying to balance, putting in a long-term fix versus the, having the issues that are gonna be caused by hydrogen sulfide, because we're already having them out there already. I think you may have mentioned it too before, but I know Ms. Myers, who apparently she must drive by there from time to time, she'll call and tell me about how bad the odor is out there at the discharge at near Strawberry Farm.
Yeah.
So, we already have problems out there currently with odors during certain times.
And I got a pump on order right now for Speeds, that was completely down, so we're told they're doing a replacement on it.
All right, so we've got the addition specifically for Speeds Creek pump station. What other thoughts?
When you talk about relining the pipe, do you do it on the outside or inside? Any
Outside.
idea?
Yeah, it's,
How much does that restrict your idea?
some, yeah. It would, so.
I know, Bob Ferris used to have it, and I guess it may still be in his office, or, I guess that Josh's
Yeah, I
office
think it's
now.
still there. I don't know if
He
the
had
radio or
a
something.
piece, and it's, it's like fiberglass, it's structural, it's considered a 40-year structural fix to the pipe. It does reduce some of the capacity of it, but not much. It's what, not even, I don't even know this, it may be a half-inch thick,
Yeah,
maybe.
it's not
add
a
in.
lot. But
Yes.
it's-
It's like a fiberglass sleeve.
Mhm.
That hard to do.
Is it hard to do that? Just drag it
Hot
through?
water or
Drag it
steam.
through, but then put steam on it, and, yeah,
Wow, cool.
It really is.
it's pretty cool.
I exaggerate a little bit, but I really think that the way they do it is an eighth wonder of the world. It is, I mean, it really is amazing.
Got something being done now.
Yeah, they'll go in and like where somebody's connected to them, they'll go in, cut out the services from, inside of them. And it really is an amazing technology, and it saves considerable money versus, retrenching and replacing.
Pretty cool, yeah.
Which I learned something yesterday, the crew that's doing my water lines up there, they said they had they said they had what they call a pipe burst,
Mhm.
where they can drag
Oh,
that
yeah.
big steep
Yeah,
pipe through.
That's,
yeah, I saw that.
And you can upsize
Yeah.
that's right. Right.
to an extent, you can upsize a line. So if you have, let's say, an 8-inch line, you may be able to burst that line from the inside and replace it, with a 10-inch or a 12-inch. I don't know how much larger you can go, but you can gain capacity by doing pipe bursting. And the price on that's come way down over the
Water
years.
heater.
I don't know, I
That's
guess
a neat-
more
that's a neat one to
companies
watch
do it.
too.
Yeah, it is. It is. We went up to Casters, took a look, was doing it several years back.
Yeah.
Kind of watched inside the river. That's a pretty cool process.
Mhm. Yeah, there's plenty of YouTube
Oh,
videos
yeah. Right.
on all these technologies.
So Speeds Creek was listed at number 4, obviously. Anything else from the committee that they may want to consider for 2026 goals? Any need to put in there any kind of engineering discussion on the project you brought up a number of meetings ago, going up through the Richland area? I can't remember the name of that pump station up there towards Walhalla, and it would bypass the S&S, Cliff B. Lee's and all that. I can't remember that one.
That's, the halfway branch.
Halfway
pump
branch.
station.
Any need to put any kind of engineering or discussion on that one?
I absolutely would consider, looking at that because, I was gonna mention this, in my miscellaneous comments, but we got the target. I think I notified everyone that we are good with Target. We've issued the permit for them for, a part of their phase 1 project, and that what we're gonna do is they apply for building permits, and we approve those building permits. We'll collect the impact fees and permit those buildings individually as they go. This was something that we worked out with DES. They came up and met with us, and the developer and Lawrence Flynn. So, and that satisfied everybody. But in order to serve the phases up there, because we're, us, Light and Water, we're capped, with whatever they want to do as part of a phase 2. We're not gonna have the capacity. And our line that goes across the railroad, but I understand from Light and Water that you're kind of capped with what you have at one of your pump stations too that would serve it. So it's been identified, and this was well before the Target development, was to extend the trunk sewer up Ridgeland Creek toward the backside of that property. And ultimately it extended up to Halfway Branch as well. So that's what Mr. Mulder is speaking about now. And I think that we talked about impact fees, and this would qualify for 100% pay for that project with impact fees, because there's no line now, it's 100% growth related. I'm not saying that we do that, but I think we absolutely consider that. But I also met with the developers yesterday. They came and met with me for close to 3 hours. We discussed what their the future plans are on site, make sure everybody kind of understands their role with them, and I think now they understand our process with the permitting of it, but I think everybody now is on the same page with that, so. But in order to serve that future, they'll need to have a line that reaches up to the backside of their property, so maybe a cost share opportunity. There's a number of ways I think we can look at doing that. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they seem open to, various options. I think they mentioned they were gonna reach out to you with Seneca sometime and talk about, I guess your future plans for sewering and utility service in that area, not just there, but upstream of there as well with, your Sheep Farm Road pump station and eventually, running the line up that would take that offline, that could possibly help free up capacity on your system on Blue Ridge Boulevard as well, where the flow would go around the city instead of having to go back through the city as it does.
Can pump stations be relocated?
They can, if depending on age and how they're designed as far as head but
A brand new one?
possibly, yes.
It can be, especially with these Foreman rubs. That's
Yeah.
the reason why we've standardized on these things, is you can adjust a lot of the conditions with these just with the belts and pulleys. So they're, in a way, they're their own spare parts, they're their own replacement pumps. In
Do
a
we
way,
want
I
to
think-
include that Richland expansion to Halfway Branch as a goal to at least evaluate it?
I think it's definitely should be there.
What do
for
you
discussion.
want to call that?
I just consider options for service along Richland Creek or something along those lines. Because I think that's a project that would require multiple phases. I think that the initial goal would be to get it up to the backside of Target where, and I don't know the name of the creek that splits off, that goes by the Sheep Farm pump station, is there a name for it? But there's a Richland Creek, I guess, runs more north toward the Halfway Branch
Right.
station, and it may not be called Richland Creek at that point. But it runs more that way, and then you have a convergence there that's almost right behind the Target parcel.
I mean, this wouldn't be just a project that target development. I mean, this has other benefits to the system, right? I mean, with regards to the Bounty Land area, other pump stations. Because I don't want to make it appear as though this is merely a target project.
That's-
My understanding was this had multiple benefits and goals.
It does, and it has an absolute trickle up effect, if you will, when I'm talking about upstream. So by targeting this development coming off, it's gonna free up 60,000 gallons in your ISS pump station that's now being reserved for this development that can be reallocated for future development within the area upstream of that station while still allowing Target to be served. And then as, a phase could be, to go and extend that to Sheep Farm and relocate or do something with that station. So it would, allow for future development as well, but right away you'd regain capacity at one of your stations. It could be reallocated to another parcel that would look, for an expansion or brand new construction, which would, that would be
So I'm
our
looking at
ideal
Richland-
for us, because it would be infield.
Richland Creek turns into Halfway Branch. I mean, it flows up that way, goes by Carolina Plastics.
So I can kind of point it out here to you.
Yeah.
So that expansion would basically be from here is where it stops. The Halfway Branch station
Yeah,
is up here, and you can see there's just kind of a straight shot.
okay.
They would obviously require private easements
Yeah,
or easements to be obtained from private property owners. But as you've heard us say numerous times, we can't stand a pump station. So this would eliminate one for us while at the same time opening up an area that we get a lot of requests generally for service in those areas for potential developers. And also with that being said, I've got an updated map up here.
Your heat maps right on top of it.
Yep, the updated map, I just got this yesterday from Catherine Amadon. And this just shows the unique requests just within the last year. So this is just 2025 requests. And then, but you can go back and look, since we started tracking these in 2022, I think is when it was, that you can see all of it. Seneca's right here, you can look at, Walhalla, Westminster, and then Miracle Circle's right around here, so it hits the area where we get the most calls.
All right, any other ideas to consider? All right, hearing no further discussion, do you need us to vote to add these to the goals list?
I don't think so, because I'll compile this with anything that the F&A committee
Okay.
wants to add, then I'll bring this back to the board for February, and then the board can decide collectively.
All right, on to item D, action items for the board consideration. The developer agreement, which we heard a little bit about previously on future projects. Chris, take it away.
In your package, you see there's an Exhibit C, and this is an agreement that we've been working on for, I think it's been a number of months of just going kind of back and forth and making sure that the wording in there not only complies with what an attorney feels would be defensible, but also that addresses all of our wants and needs as well. So this, before we would extend to own any line extension, so this would be for a line that we would own, that it would be required before we would even take a permit application from them, an impact fee, that they would execute this agreement with us. And you kind of got a little bit of a hint of this, I think it was at the board meeting back, this was a couple weeks ago, I think I mentioned that we were working on something like this, and was it a board or the last committee meeting last month, but where I brought up that, do we want to just do this as a blanket approval of the document and the wording, and just where we fill in the blank with the development, or do you want us to bring this to the board every single time we would have a case like this? And I think there was discussion that we just consider the general language of the document.
So is this for trunk line extension ownership, or are we talking about a retail approach to owning the system with the collection system inside of the neighborhood?
This would be both. So we've got a case now with Westminster where and that was, I think it was reported on the other day about the Armstrong Road development, where Westminster had stated, well, this is going to be, it's going to become part of the OHRSA anyways if we do move toward consolidation. So we're just going to go ahead and let us have that system now. So we're at the point now, we've approved the design. They are at the point where they're ready to come in and pay their permit fees. So that's what it's for. But it would also apply to like an extension that we did up in West Union, where would be at a Tractor Supply location, where Tractor Supply, they paid to extend the main 210 feet or so, and it was funded with the developer. So it would apply to something like that as well, plus anything that may happen with an extension down along the interstate that we would own, operate, and maintain. So it would be universal for how it would be used.
So opposite of the model that we traditionally operated under, I mean, you're starting to get into a retail customer collection
That mindset.
model.
And we, I think, I'm trying to think back, I think that the only line extension that we've done since I've been here to the trunk, talking about a collection system, you know, that may be in a road and not within the development itself, is this Tractor Supply, you know, that 200 feet or so that extended it from the, you know, pretty much from where the Sphinx is located up toward where they're putting the new building now. I can't think of any other ones, but I guess Brent Little's might have, you know, probably if we would have had something like this in place at the time, it probably would have worked for that as well. You know, you had a private party funding and designing a line that's eventually gonna be turned over to us. It would, you know, it would apply in those cases too.
Does there need to be an agreement between the city and the sewer authority for that assumption of responsibility as well? I mean, because it's not something we traditionally do in order to accept an asset on a system that typically would be owned and operated by the city. Does there need to be agreements with the cities for this as well until the reconstitution work is complete? I mean, I don't want to call it premature, but what happens if that doesn't, if the final result of that study and work doesn't come to fruition, and all of a sudden now you're getting into a retail development?
You know, in that case, I wonder, you know, maybe worth having that conversation at a board meeting, but I would think that if that may be the case, and it may be something as, I won't say as simple as, but that the board votes to transfer those assets back to whoever that party may be.
If the party doesn't accept them?
Good question, but I guess, you know, and I think we currently operate, not to go back and look at this, and I certainly have to run this by Lawrence, but I think that we've operated off of a model anyways of first right of refusal, where the cities are given that opportunity currently, and then if they refuse, then we would or could be the retail provider for them. I think that I recall something like that, but I'm not an attorney and I don't know how to interpret those agreements the way they would. So that would certainly be a question we would need to run by council in this case.
Committee? What say you?
I'm okay with this. I mean,
Do we like the blanket approach where we would have it would, certainly there may be some site-specific differences that would need to be incorporated into this model document, and, you know, maybe there's a section to incorporate any specific provisions for site-specific issues, but, I mean, do we want to support just a blanket document that they would use for each occasion, or do you think, I guess we can start there, do you think that each development needs to be brought back individually for approval?
Chris, it'd be easier for you or the organization if it was a blanket.
It absolutely would. I think that also too, if there's any special conditions
Yeah, those would be.
that are being requested
Mhm.
to be added to it other than these fill in the blanks, then, you know, that would be something that would come back.
And you wouldn't have to wait for commissioners meeting every single month to bring up all of these individual projects. Yeah, I'm for the blanket.
But, you know, really, currently it's not a ton of them, as you heard. I had a hard time thinking of the three I just named. It didn't even, had a hard time even coming up with a third one, and thinking that Brent Little's probably would have applied in this case too.
Okay.
But, you know, that one that we have out there, you know, we just want to make sure that, again, is to protect the organization in the long term.
You want to check with Lawrence and see, to that point, Mr. Dial, you want to check with Lawrence and see if we just want to add a special considerations or a special conditions section that you guys can just fill in the blank as necessary without coming back for board approval, unless it's some type of financial or relationship or right-of-way issue that may need board approval. I mean, if it's just a simple special consideration, then I would think having that section where it gives you a little bit of flexibility to operate, you know, on the move with the developer, rather than having to come back for everything that's maybe different than what's in here, but that's something we can talk to Lauren, he may recommend no, anything you know, aside from what's in here, needs to come back, but I wouldn't have an issue with having the special considerations section where you can fill in the blank with anything that is operationally relevant to you, right? But other than that,
All right. I'll certainly check with them on that.
I mean, I think the document's clear that it pretty much puts all the responsibilities for everything on the developer.
It's
I
clear.
mean, that's all that every section is you have to do this, you have to do this is your, so there's very little OJRSA responsibility in here. So it's, I think Lawrence has done a good job at least putting the responsibilities on the developer.
This agreement was just good for years, is that right? I think that's better that in.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I think that it, you know, it addresses, but I think too, and I'll have to go back and reread that part of it, but it would be, you know, it would cover really anything that has to do with a warranty-related issue about cost recovery, some of these other matters that they fail to take action within an appropriate time. I think it gives them a certain number of days for a non-emergency matter to come back and correct, but it also allows us cost recovery if it's an emergency, and we can go out there and make those corrections too. But, you know, I think that Lawrence, I think they're, you know, and Kim Lunder with Hope Flynn also helped with putting this together, and I think that they learned a good bit as well as to how the sequencing of events occurs, you know, with, you know, having this, where this would tie in, that this would have to be signed prior to us issuing a, you know, any type of a letter that says we will own the assets, which is required of them and their engineer to submit with the DES packet that would go with the record drawings and the engineer's certification letter saying that it was built according to specs in order to receive the permit to operate. So, you know, it would all tie into when warranties would kick in, you know, when those would start. So I think that they kind of learned a lot about how the order of things. I think they thought the permit to operate would be issued prior to something like this taking place, or the letter saying that we would own it and operate it. So, you know, we addressed a number of those. Like I said, it's gone back and forth a number of times, including having, you know, other outside parties look at it too that are in the utilities, operations and permitting fields, just to ask them for advice and consideration based on some of the experiences that they've had in the past with some projects where they do many of these and agreements that they had with developers too, so.
Any recommendations for the board?
I'm good.
Do we hear a motion that we submit the draft developer agreement as provided in Exhibit C to the full board for their discussion and consideration?
I'll make a motion that we do provide this to the commission for the full board's acceptance.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to follow? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion related to this matter before the vote is called? All right, hearing none. All in favor by way of aye? Any opposed likewise? All right, hearing none opposed, motion carries and will be submitted to the board for their discussion and consideration. All right, Chris, your show.
All right, thank you. Environmental regulatory, I really just have one item here, and it isn't anything, you know, we haven't had any known issues in the last month or so, have we? But I was going yesterday and looking at matters within our e-permitting system, which is the state's, their regulatory, I I guess, what would you call it, online
It's online
database, you know, they handle everything now through it for reporting, where we report our sewer overflows to where we, you know, Kyle goes and you enter in the DMRs, which are the monitoring reports on a monthly basis. So it's an all-encompassing tool that they have. But I was going in there yesterday looking for a construction permit or a permit to operate. I got an email that there was something been uploaded, and I still can't quite figure out what it was. But I noticed in there that it had an item that said due April 30th, and it called it the pre-treatment interjurisdictional agreement. I don't even know what this is. I just know, you know, it's due as part of our NPDES permit. So I went and looked, and so we must upload our sewer use regulation, headworks analysis, industrial user questionnaires, and valid industrial user permits to them as part of this. So where the interjurisdictional agreement, you know, and I use quotes for that, part of it even is, I have no idea what they're even talking about or why they named it that. But, you know, so, you know, we're working on that and stuff we should be able to have already, but I know that we're having to revisit our sewer use regulation, which is right now in the hands of Sonia Harrison at Goldie Associates. Because of our new permit, we're having to consider, and some changes, from what I understand, in the federal or state law governing that, we may have to make some minor modifications to the regulation to address those. But the headworks analysis I found to be kind of interesting, because what that is that's data that they actually use from here, loading data that, you know, from raw wastewater that we receive, that is used to help establish the permitting parameters. Did I say that correctly, Kyle? That's what it's saying. So they look at, you know, what we have coming in, the environmental conditions that we have, especially within the discharge or receiving waters of the creek and downstream bodies of water. So we'll have to be providing all this to them, but that's going to be kind of a little bit of a load on Allison to be able to, especially with the industrial pretreatment permits that we must be able to provide, plus the questionnaires to.
So you're saying that you were on the system looking for something specific and then just ran across this?
I did, so I knew we had to upload some documents by April 30th, but to see it called pre-treatment interjurisdictional agreement was not what I was looking to have it titled as. So I don't even know what this is. So I didn't know if this was something above and beyond what, because we do have interjurisdictional agreements with all of the cities and the county that we have to provide. And I think that's an EPA requirement that has been, they were executed when, back in 2019 or 2018, 2019. So when I first saw it, I was like, well, I just need to go and re-upload these agreements that we have with the municipalities and counties again. Well, it didn't even say anything at all about providing them with a true interjurisdictional agreement. It has some, the list it included was just what I read to you. So to me, it was a little confusing, but we did know we had to provide them with some information by the end of April, but it just
You know
kind
good
of
and well the state.
caught me off guard with how they
You'll
put it.
send it to them and it'll just sit there. Nobody's gonna look at that stuff. I mean, from 46 counties.
Well, I think, and this is a matter for Allison because she stays much more in tune with this than me, and Kyle may know more about this, but with it being more of an external thing and Allison being much more in communication, I think, with DES, with regulatory matters, because, so much of our regulation does govern, industries and industrial users and potential pollutants that they discharge, that from what I have understood, that the state, I think, is, they're kind of really under the gun in a lot of aspects, talking about with it reissuing permits.
CPA to come down.
Yeah, so the federal government, I think, is working or looking more closely at the state to try to get a lot of these things moving. again, that in the past have, gone, and like they did a, as an example, I think Allison said that, and it was part of my time coming here, that around 2013 or 2014, they did a pre-treatment inspection, which is, they do one periodically, but they never even generated an inspection report to us about it, just kind of sat there. So they finally came to another one that is the one that counted eventually, but, now I think they've done 2 in the last 3 years or something like that. So I think they're trying to get back into, I guess, what they're tasked to do on the federal side of things.
Okay.
And that's the only thing I even have with that, but it's just the wording of that I found quite interesting. You have anything else regulatory wise? Miscellaneous, I already mentioned the 2 notes that I had about that. One was about my meeting yesterday with the Thornwell Development folks, and it was really good. Like I said, we spent about 3 hours and we went through everything. I think that, again, everybody I think is on the same sheet of paper now about, what needs to be done moving forward.
That's a target, right?
That's correct. We
Why,
do.
why did it take them so long for this to happen like this?
I don't know, other than, I don't even want to really speculate.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want
But didn't
to.
we end up at the same result as what they were asking for from the very beginning, to be able to pay the impact fee as the properties were taken down?
We did, but the thing with that though is it required DES involvement, because that went against our policy. The way the policy was and still is that they pay for the capacity that they're acquiring in the plant at the time that it hits DES with a construction permit. So the initial request was for 58,000 some odd gallons, but that's for the whole build out of whatever their phase 1 is. Well, phase 1 is more than just Target and one out parcel or one building. There's numerous other buildings that are there. Well, DES requires the sizing of the systems being designed to serve the whole future build out. So you have,
So was DES asked for that modification when the developer first requested this method? Or did we wait until this moment to contact DES for a modified?
no, so they requested that DES reduce it to an amount, and have it based on more, where they would design it just for the flow associated with Target, if I remember right. This goes back to about September or so, August, September. And DES came back in October and said no, that, it's got to be sized for what it is, and that's the number that's going to be granted to the treatment plant. So that was when we stated to them that that we tried. I wrote a letter and email supporting it that went to DES, and they said no. So they came up, met with us in November here, DES as well as the developers, and DES, while they didn't concede, they still are going to kind of stick to their model, but they have allowed us the flexibility, and it puts a burden on us to have to do it, but to make everybody happy,
What changed their mind?
we agreed to in this case that, I don't know I think what satisfied DES was that we would notify them every time we permitted something on that site. So, and then that's gonna go and get added to our checkbook list. So, everybody's heard me talk about this checkbook. Oh, I think I left them off. It's actually have it. It's like 6 or 7 sheets of paper long. I was showing it to the folks yesterday, and it lists every project that's been done. Well, it has that Target, the Thornwell development on there now at 58 some odd thousand, which comes off our 7.8 million gallon total. So I've got to write a letter. Their engineer has to write a letter, and DES is aware of this. We, it was part of the plan that we had discussed, where they're gonna request a reduction in that flow that they've asked for to, whatever it was, 20 some odd thousand gallons to serve Target and one out parcel. And then I'll write a letter stating that, we have agreed with them that this would be applicable. We were satisfied with this, but that we also become the responsible party for having to submit every time that we permit something to DES all the way up to that 58 something thousand gallons. So, it does put a little bit of a burden on us to have to do that and also to remember to do it. But in order to get the thing moving and try to appease everybody, I think I think everybody gave a little bit in this case to get it going. So that is the long story about how the whole thing ended up happening. And those were the only two items that I had.
All right, any committee members' discussion today? Any other items that they want to bring to the floor? All right, hearing none, we stand adjourned.